Hey everyone, I think I haven't done it before, but I've just checked out the stats for this channel, and it seems that I've surpassed the 100 subs threshold, sort of. It got me thinking that it's pretty damn important, because it's like I'm just starting this stuff out. I've been trying different various various approaches in the past, but it never worked out that much. Yeah, I've decided to start this channel originally to showcase some technical demos, and if being an automation QA, probably I'm still working as an automation QA, so probably I'm gonna continue doing that from time to time. But there's not much time that I got because I'm like working the main job. But really, I want this to become the main activity for me. Really, quite frankly, I'm having fun with this. As much as I hate my life, I really, I'm having fun with this specific activity. Was being able to to showcase or research or do showcase a topic or like a concept, or research some interesting concept once again, or like news or something like that, or what's going on in the world right now, because there's actually so much going on if you think about it. And or do some reaction video, or maybe this some other type of activity. So like this channel, and as I intended it to be, as it's gonna be in the future, and what it's becoming now, is just pretty much gonna be a mix of all these things. This is like with me, what you see is what you get. So this KPI, I wouldn't call it like a KPI, but probably like just a threshold, right? This milestone, right? It's pretty damn important to me, and I wanted to express my gratitude and just say to each and every one of you who's watching me a big thank you, because I know how almost impossible it is to to draw attention to important topics, or some personal issues, or being able, I don't know, maybe being able to motivate somebody to speak up, because for me it's a big deal. It really is a big deal, and I'm gonna tell you a little bit more about that. Like, I just had this sort of epiphany or something like that, how do you call it, in a way that I used to work as a manual QA sort of teacher in the past, like around the end of 2020. So it was the first time for me, but at that time it was like COVID, obviously, lockdown after lockdown. But I got lucky in terms of being able to do it in front of the live audience, like not the way that I'm doing now, like in a sort of home studio, but in front of the live audience. Basically, I've had a group of 10 peeps, and various ages, various backgrounds. Some had technical background, some were not. There was a guy who worked like as a model in China, so just to put into perspective. And there was another man who was like almost twice as my age back then, right? So maybe 1.5x my age, sort of, in his mid-40s. So what I'm trying to say is that it was pretty hard to do it, but I did it back then because I wanted to overcome this fear of public speech. I always had this feeling that I can do this, that I'm a natural at this. But in the meantime, I was also blocked from doing this throughout my entire life, and there's various root causes for that. And I'm gonna tell you about one of those right now. Going back to this topic of being able to speak in front of live audience, I did it in front of 10 people, and on some professional topics. I put this into perspective that now I got 100 subs, and if you take if we gather in some live audience, if we gather in some let's say live space, or auditorium, as they have in the university, or some something like that, that's a big number, and man, I definitely can feel it, and it just puts things into perspective. So for me, these numbers are not just numbers. I understand that behind every subscriber there's a real human being. I hope, at least I hope so, that there's not some AI bots or something like that. But some of you have been writing comments, talking to me, and I understand that there is that this is a pretty huge achievement. It's so easy to say and look at these big channels the ones that have millions of subs, and have the whole production teams. Maybe not all of them, but some of them definitely do have all like these production teams that work behind the scenes. I do it all by myself, and yeah, maybe it's not perfect. I understand that this is far from perfect, but once again, being able to capture the attention and draw attention of 100 people on a regular basis, this means a lot to me. It really means a lot to me, because I was also, as I've mentioned before, I was also blocked from doing this throughout my entire life. So being able to do it now, I just want to speak up that, it's never too late. I'm in my mid-30s right now, but, it's never too late to start that. And, going back, like, if we take a little bit of, like spiritual swing upon it, like, take a look at this situation from a spiritual perspective, it would mean that me as a goyim, right? Because there's now, like, we, the goyims, versus them, the chosen ones, the chosen people, I'm not going to elaborate too much on that. You can do your own research, but I'm pretty sure that I'm going to be speaking about this in like various shapes or forms in the future videos. So once again, thank you for tuning in, and I'm not going to stop doing this. I've just started, just had this foundation. Finally, I've had this foundation, because as soon as I start, doing something that I like, and this is a big paradox of life, and it contradicts the information that you, if you've been following some, spiritual people like here on YouTube that speak up about, the vibrations and states and manifestations and all that stuff, and it's also good, and there's only love and light in the world. Man, there's been anything but love and light for me. And all that stuff like lush farming, and I was sort of, wouldn't call that a victim, but a participant who wasn't aware that he was being lush farmed. So we're gonna take a look at that and take a deep dive into that in the future, that's for sure. But this video is just to give my thanks and my appreciation towards each and every person who follows me, because once again, if we all, sort of come together, like in the real world, offline, not in front of the screens, we're gonna be like a pretty big group, should I say, group of 100. So yeah, that's a lot. Let's get to this personal story that I wanted to share with you. And once again, this is my therapy. This is a form of therapy for me as well. As a man, as a guy, as a person, as a human being who was always silenced, who didn't have a chance to speak up, and when I did, I was always silenced, and just go back into your box, and you don't have the opinion. Nobody's gonna listen to that, or like phrases like, what are people gonna think about you? If I've had supportive people around me like 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, man, I think I would be like, we would be a group of million right now. I really think that. I'm really sure of it. But why this is a form of therapy? Because maybe this is gonna motivate somebody to speak up, and I hope it does. Because when you're speaking up about any sort of trauma, about any sort of negative thing, like if you understand that toxic positivity is just that, toxic, you cannot just put the frown upside down, just go ahead and smile like that and just talk like that, and take a stapler or something like that. Fix your fix your cheeks and just talk like that. Hey, I'm a normie and everything's alright. I don't care. I'm deeply entrenched into the fucking system, and I hate my life, but I hate your life even more because you have a chance to talk, to speak up your mind. So I'm gonna impose covert attacks and subtle attacks upon you. Yay! But it sounds so good and fine, and I'm a stupid ass bot. And I'm go ahead with my stupid ass bot and PC-ish life. Right? This is a form of therapy, because when you speak up your mind, when you speak your mind, when you bring up those densely compressed emotions within you, whether it's your trauma, whether it's relationships, whether it's conflicts, any sort, any shape or form of conflicts, and everyone has such. It's just that many people are suppressing themselves. Well, I'm not. I'm just so sick of suppressing myself, because the more I suppress myself, the more actual world, my actual surroundings, force me to speak my mind and force me to express myself in any shape or form. Going back to that situation that I wanted to tell you about, that I wanted to share with you. I was in the 3rd grade back in the day. So if you start your school at 7 years, so I was 10 or 11, I don't know. Maybe I can't remember precisely. But this one situation has left a mark on my psyche, and it was one of the root causes that forced me to to silence myself, to think of myself as something small and like unworthy, just probably like just unworthy of being heard, of being expressed in this world in any shape or form. So we had the music lesson, and like the classroom was something like with the stairs that they have in the universities, when you speak in front of the big audience, so that everyone is like has their desk on their level and they can see you basically, the speaker or the professor. We have this class, and we are being called one by one by the music teacher, and we are being forced to sing some patriotic stupid ass song which nobody knows, maybe except like two people who followed the rules, who were being like good boys and good girls out there. But eventually that leads you nowhere. As Ukrainian conflict shows, it usually leads you to war. If you follow the instructions of your government, it's gonna lead you to the grave, and sooner than later. So we're being called one by one by the teacher. I didn't have great relations with my classmates. I was like, I was heavily bullied by some of them, and I constantly felt alone. And we were like sticking into groups with with other peeps, with my classmates at the time. So it's because elementary school and just like this school in general, even the university, but that's like yet another thing. But kids are real, man, and like every adult is a kid inside, mostly unsatisfied with their lives. But it was something like a jungle for me, and every day was a survival. I hated that place. How people they grow up and they become these adults which keep on like regurgitating, replicating the same programs that they were fed into into their heads back in the day. And it's just crazy to me to being able to see how that happens, to be able to see the full cycle that leads us back to the goddamn destruction that we are living in, or that we are living through today. So anyway, we have been forced to sing that stuff. I came out like before the whole audience, and immediately they started laughing at me, and the teacher started to play some chords, and I just like I felt this. I was like frozen because of the fear that I had. I've had this feeling that I wanna jump on each and every single of those idiots, like back in the day, right? And just fight until my last breath. Just that. It's just that. It's so densely compressed aggression that you cannot possibly comprehend it. It's just it's an affected state. It's like almost as if you are under the influence of some substance. I don't know. It just clouds your mind, with this aggression. But in the meantime, it was fear because I was just a single person, and nobody would take my side. All they can do is like bully and shame you. And then like years after, they end up somewhere in the trenches or in the drenches, right? So we'll see who's gonna laugh in the long run. But that's another story. So I'm speaking about the feeling that I had. The feeling was terrible. It was so terrible that I cannot describe it. I can, like, as I'm speaking about it right now, at this very same moment, I can feel this shame, this cold shower type thing making its way like around my body. It's like shivers, but bad type of shivers. And this was one of the root causes that basically made me, shut up and just never speak about how I feel and what I think of things. Never, voice my opinion and so on and so forth. Being able to do this for 100 people means the goddamn world to me right now. And I really want you to know that. It means that you, good people, have the attention span more than 30 seconds. Or how long does it last nowadays? Like 15 seconds? I don't know, 20? 10? You tell me, please. So being able to do this is a blessing. A real blessing. And I treat it as such. Yeah, sometimes like I go full aggressor mode, full hardcore mode in the vids. I don't choose my words because I feel that I don't have to. Because I've chosen my words for long enough. For many years in my life, I've always tried to choose my words, but I'm so sick of it now. Given that, man, come on, our world is being run by a satanic, cannibalistic cult and PDFs as well, and all combined together, who think that we are the goyim and they are the chosen. Do you really think that I have to choose my words? Or that you have to choose your words? And do you really think that you have to be afraid? They make the rules for us so that we are entangled in these rules, and then we don't see, the core of the soul, that pure evil that runs the world today. They do it on purpose, of course. If I wanted to deceive somebody, if I wanted to manipulate somebody, I would tell them everything but the truth. Like, look here what's going on, look there what's going on. Just to redirect your attention, from the main thing that constructs this system, that has been constructing this system for so many decades now. Probably like so many generations, maybe for millennia, I know, like for centuries, for thousands of years, I don't know. And these things being now in the open, I don't know, it's too much even for me. And I'm not like I'm not a light-hearted guy, even though I got a crazy heart, but I'm not like, I've seen stuff. I've been living like in the country during the war period. I'm not saying like, of course I'm not, my pain is not more important than anybody else's. So that's why I try to speak up. And if this motivates you, that's amazing. Maybe you're a guy sitting in your room and you're like so like in your head right now because this whole world is just seems like it's against you. Because it knows if you're gonna speak something, maybe it's just gonna come to pass one way or another. Maybe if you are going to express yourself, you're gonna feel better. You're gonna feel your natural, original state of being. This state of oneness that many spiritual teachers of the past were talking about, and that a lot of people are talking about today as well. Or maybe you are a creative lady or a girl that who's been forced to go silent, who's been told that your opinion doesn't matter, who's been told that your hobby doesn't matter, who's been told, oh, you're never gonna get anywhere with this. I have dated a lady probably like 8 years ago or something like that. She was into drawing, but in the same time she was good with the tech as well. She was something like the alt girls. I believe that's the term which describes the modern movement, but it was called something else back in the day. I've had like really good time. It was not it was not all about sex. It was really not all about that. And this is yet another topic that I want to talk about, like elaborate like on this topic more in the future. But all I'm trying to say is that this genuine connection, that you're not only interested in those like primitive type stuff. Of course, we cannot live without that. We're humans. We are the goyim, of course. We're not the chosen ones, right? We're just dark horses. But this is what makes us alive. This is what makes us us. What makes you you. What makes me me. Me. Sorta. So once again, thank you, really, to each and every one of you who subscribe to this channel. And thank you for your attention. This is as deep as it gets. Thank you for paying attention to what's going on. Thank you for, for me it's support. For me it's support. And seeing that, for example, my generation, how did this happen? Like, how did we really end up here? My generation of millennials, we are called millennials because we lived through the, through the change of millennia, from the 1900 some years until 2000. And we passed that, sort of milestone. So how did we went from the generation that dreamed big, that had a fantasy, that had the freedom of expression when we were teenagers and young adults. How did we went from all that to the goddamn cubicles, to the goddamn silicone lips, to the goddamn implanted boobs, to the goddamn selfie, like ass selfies, to the goddamn manipulations, to the fact that now like modern women, most of them treat sex as a currency and men as just money bags and resources. How did we end up here? Like, what the hell happened to us? This is something that I still can't comprehend. I just can't comprehend it, man. I just can't. Why did we choose the cubicles? Why? Because the cubicle is the epiphany of the modern civilization. The modern civilization hasn't produced anything but the cubicle. And if my job is to raise the awareness, like with everything that I do, like with anything, with any topic that I uncover, like whether it's personal, whether it's like something is going on in the world, well, most likely I do that because it resonates with me, and I'm super thankful that it resonates with you as well. I am. So we are past 100, and I'm gonna invoke my dreamer / manifestation abilities if I possess such, which I don't know. And probably the next milestone is gonna be 500. Why not? And then we'll be a legion someday. But we'll get there. Once again, thank you all for tuning in. There is more to come. Peace out. Alex over.